Okay, so as you can see, my name is Allison Huchko. This summer I had the pleasure of living and working in Vilnius, Lithuania. So before I tell you about my summer, just really quickly an introduction about who I am. Go ahead. So I received my Bachelor of Science in Architecture degree in 2019, followed by my Master of Architecture degree with a focus in urban design in 2019. Since then, I became a lead APP plus C accredited professional in 2020, and most recently in June of 2022 became a licensed architect in the state of Pennsylvania. As far as my work history, after my master's degree, I lived in Chicago for about a year where I worked for Bailey Edward Design, which is a company there that has a focus in historic preservation projects. And I am currently working and living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I work for a company called Marketai Architects, and we specialize in adaptive reuse work. Go ahead. So that's me. But this summer, I was working for a group called Fixus Mobilis. So just a little bit of background about them, because you probably don't know. So essentially, Fixus is a federally funded program in Lithuania that essentially travels around the country and provides preventive maintenance and care to historic structures in Lithuania. Essentially, their goal is to sort of tackle kind of a two-phased problem, which is, first is to educate the owners of these buildings that they are capable of actually doing some maintenance work on their own to maintain the buildings. And the second is to help the owners to understand this, or to dispel this myth that the owners think that because their building is a listed historic property that they aren't allowed to do anything to it, that they aren't allowed to touch it. So a lot of their historic properties over there are kind of in pretty bad shape. And so that is kind of their goal. And so this summer I was kind of helping them with that mission, so go ahead. So essentially their work falls into kind of three steps. The first is the inspection, the second is actually doing maintenance work, and the third is writing a report and providing it to the owner. So go ahead. So first, just a little bit about the inspection work. Essentially, the inspections would involve doing a level of photo documentation of a historic property that we were visiting. So documenting the damages and any of the issues that were present there, as well as just like the general condition of the building. And go to the next slide. And then, of course, also taking material samples for laboratory testing. So here we're, me and my coworker Inga are collecting mold samples. The samples typically were either samples of mold conditions, samples of paint materials, samples to test for like lead and hazardous chemicals and things like that, samples of plaster and wall materials to test for salts and different things, and wood and things like that to test for rot or bugs. Go to the next slide. So then, and also when we would do the inspections, there was a level of just kind of understanding the conditions of the building, so testing the temperature and the humidity of the environment. So once we would do the inspection, we would come back for a separate visit and do maintenance work. So I definitely got my hands dirty quite a bit this summer, and I did a lot. So this is absolutely not everything that I did, but just some of the highlights. But in general, in addition to what you're going to see in the next couple of slides, almost every time we went to do maintenance, the work included cleaning the gutters, cleaning the drains, pulling weeds and plants that were up against the building, sometimes literally like growing out of the face of the building, as well as just general cleaning, like sometimes brick or stone would be falling off and just cleaning the debris away from steps and things like that. In addition to some of the more fun and exciting, more glamorous, I don't know if you call it glamorous, but more glamorous tasks. So this is a window repair that I got to work on. The windows in this bell tower of the church had some broken glass, so we replaced the glass. You can go to the next slide. Here, what I'm doing, this is a gate of a church, kind of their entrance gate, and it was obviously, you can see the masonry is sort of crumbling, and what we were doing was going through and cleaning off all the dust and debris from the masonry to prep it for getting a little bit of caulk and mortar to sort of secure some of the pieces. It was meant to be temporary. This is not like a permanent solution, but just to kind of keep it together a little bit before they can do something more permanent to resolve the issues. You can go to the next. Here at this building, this wall had a bit of a ledge on it as it came down, and over time water has accumulated there and it just started to crumble. And so what we were doing was going back in with some mortar to provide a slope to that top ledge so that water could drain off more effectively. So that's what I'm doing there. And this one was really recent. This was like 2 weeks ago. This building, when we went there, pretty much had a giant hole in the roof. And so as you can imagine, water and animals and dirt and all kinds of not good stuff was getting into the building. So when we went back to do our maintenance work, our main goal was to just fix the hole in the roof to a certain degree. So we essentially ripped out all of the rotted wood, and here we put in some of the new structural members, and then eventually provided a new membrane and new roof panels to kind of enclose it. Let's go ahead to the next. So we do all this maintenance work, and then the final step is to prepare a report for the owner. You can go ahead. So again, the owners aren't architects, they aren't designers, they're just normal people, so the goal of the report was for it to be very user-friendly. So a lot of the damage was put on a rating scale, and that allowed it to be understandable by the owners, and it was given a degree of severity in terms of when you need to fix an issue or how immediate something needs to take place. So obviously I don't speak Lithuanian, so my degree of helping with the report was limited, but what I could do was, on the next slide, work on some of the diagrams and the drawings. So in the appendix of all of the reports, there was a drawing that had all the plans for all the floors of the building, and any damages that we experienced were marked and color-coded in a specific way, as well as all of the photos. We took a ton of photos during the first inspection, and so part of my role was to also curate all of the photos for the report, pick the ones that demonstrated the damages the best, and then label all of the locations on the drawing, as well as the material samples. So we were taking samples of paint and wood and all of that stuff, and so we would also label that on here so that they know what the locations of those samples were, where they came from. Next. So that was kind of the general overview of what I did. To close, I'll just touch on a couple of highlights. So one of the really cool places I got to go this summer, the job essentially was each week spending 2 to 3 days traveling to some place in Lithuania to look at historic buildings. But this is one of the coolest places I got to go. So this is the Coronian Spit, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's essentially a giant sand dune in the middle of the Baltic that just kind of developed over time. So it's a really interesting contrast, because in one area it looks like you're kind of in the middle of the desert, and then you kind of turn around and there's the Baltic Sea on either side of you. So it's a really special location, and we spent 4 days there doing work on buildings. So that was definitely a really cool work highlight, that I got to go to a really special place there. And last slide. But the personal highlight of the trip was that Vilnius is actually one of, I think, only 3 European capitals where you can fly a hot air balloon over their old town and city center. So on my last night in the city, I took a hot air balloon ride and got to kind of experience a really incredible view and kind of cap off the whole summer in a really special way. So, yeah. So thank you.